The Civil Rights Act of 1871 gave the federal government the power to fight the KKK and protect African Americans' rights during Reconstruction. It elevated certain acts of racial violence to federal offenses and empowered the president to deploy federal troops and suspend habeas corpus to suppress Klan's terror. Join our hosts as they discuss how this legislation played a crucial role in protecting the civil rights of African Americans during a turbulent period in Americans' history, and learn how it is still relevant today.
The 1871 Act, sometimes called the Ku Klux Klan Act.
Right.
It's not just, some dusty old document. It's a living part of our legal history, and it still has a huge impact today.
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting is we've got a stack of sources here. And, it really takes us right back to, the end of the Civil War.
Right.
And I guess my first question for you is, what was life like for Black people in the South during this time? Because, we had the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments.
Right.
Which, felt like huge victories on paper.
You would think, right.
Yeah.
But these sources paint a picture of a very different reality.
Really?
Yeah. The 13th Amendment, of course, abolished slavery.
Mm-hmm.
The 14th granted citizenship and equal protection. And the 15th guaranteed the right to vote. On paper, it looked like freedom and equality were finally within reach.
Right.
But the reality on the ground was much harsher.
So what prevented these amendments from actually delivering on that promise of equality?
Well, Southern states weren't exactly eager to embrace these changes.
Right.
They actively resisted the new rights of Black citizens, for instance. Many states enacted these things called Black Codes,
okay,
which were basically designed to restrict the freedoms of newly freed slaves.
So it's almost like trying to create a system that was almost as bad as slavery itself.
Absolutely. These codes imposed curfews, limited land ownership, and even controlled what kinds of jobs Black people could hold.
Wow.
It was a way to maintain white control and limit Black people's economic and social mobility.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you had the rise of the Ku Klux Klan.
KKK. Yeah. And from what I've read, they weren't just a bunch of misguided individuals. This was a well-organized force of terror.
That's right. The Klan used violence and intimidation to suppress Black rights. They targeted anyone who dared to challenge the white supremacist order, from Black voters and politicians to educators and community leaders.
Oh.
They burned homes, attacked people, and generally created an atmosphere of fear that was meant to keep Black people in their place.
It's hard to believe that this was happening just a few years after the Civil War, a war that was supposed to have settled the issue of slavery and equality.
Yeah, the struggle for equality was far from over. The federal government recognized the severity of the situation and stepped in to try and protect Black citizens.
Okay.
They passed several civil rights acts during Reconstruction, but the violence persisted.
Right.
And that's where the Civil Rights Act of 1871 comes in.
So this act was a direct response to the KKK's reign of terror.
Precisely. It was a powerful assertion of federal authority, making it clear that the government wouldn't tolerate the Klan's violence and intimidation.
Okay.
The act, also known as the Ku Klux Klan Act, was specifically designed to dismantle the Klan and protect the rights of Black citizens.
So what were some of the key features of this act? What made it so powerful?
Well, for one, it allowed the president to use military force to suppress the Klan and even suspend habeas corpus in certain cases.
Wow.
This was a bold move, showing that the federal government was serious about enforcing the law and protecting Black communities.
So this really challenged the idea of states' rights, which was often used to justify inaction when it came to racial violence.
Exactly. It put the federal government squarely in the role of protector of civil rights.
Right.
But perhaps the most important part of the act is Section 2.
Section 2. What did that do?
Section 2 made it a federal crime to conspire to deprive anyone of equal protection of the laws. It was like a legal bullseye aimed right at the heart of the KKK and their organized efforts to terrorize Black communities.
So it wasn't just about stopping individual acts of violence. It was about dismantling the entire system of oppression that the KKK represented.
Right. And it gave the federal government the power to prosecute Klan members, even if their actions weren't explicitly endorsed by the state government.
Wow.
It removed that layer of plausible deniability that the Klan had been hiding behind.
Okay, so Section 2 was about cracking down on organized white supremacy. But what about individuals whose rights were violated? Did the act offer any protection for them?
That's where Section 1 comes in, now codified as 42 U.S.C. 1983.
Okay.
This section was groundbreaking because it allowed individuals to sue state officials who violated their constitutional rights.
So if a local sheriff, for example, was turning a blind eye to Klan violence, or worse, actively participating in it, Black citizens could sue them in federal court.
That's exactly right. This was a huge step because it held individuals accountable for their actions and provided a legal avenue for victims to seek justice.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that before this, many local officials in the South were either sympathetic to the KKK or too afraid to challenge them.
That's fascinating, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface here, but we were just discussing how groundbreaking this act was, especially Section 1, which gave individuals the power to sue state officials who violated their constitutional rights.
It was a bold move at the time, and its impact continues to be felt today. You see, while it was initially intended to combat the KKK's reign of terror, it's become a cornerstone of civil rights law in general.
That's what I find so fascinating about this act. It was born out of a very specific historical moment, but its reach extends far beyond those circumstances.
Exactly. The Act's language focuses on protecting equal protection under the law, a principle with broad and powerful implications.
So how did the act actually play out in the years after it was passed? Did it effectively dismantle the KKK?
It did have a significant impact. Federal prosecutions under the Act helped weaken the Klan's hold on the South, but it wasn't an overnight victory.
What were some of the challenges the act faced?
Well, one of the biggest obstacles was pushback from the Supreme Court in a series of decisions in the late 19th century. The court narrowed the scope of federal power to enforce civil rights.
So even with this powerful new law, the fight for equality faced setbacks.
Yes, there were definite steps backward. For example, in the civil rights cases of 1883, the court gutted the Civil Rights Act of 1875, which was meant to guarantee equal access to public accommodations.
What happened there?
The court essentially ruled that Congress didn't have the power to regulate private individuals, only state actors. This meant that private businesses could still discriminate, which paved the way for the Jim Crow era.
That's a stark reminder that progress isn't always linear. But the 1871 Act wasn't forgotten, was it?
Absolutely not. It resurfaced during the civil rights movement of the mid-20th century, becoming a vital tool for activists fighting for racial justice.
How did they use the act to challenge segregation and other forms of discrimination?
Activists and lawyers realized that the Act's provisions could be applied to a wider range of situations. For instance, they used it to challenge discriminatory voting practices and police brutality.
So it was like they were dusting off an old weapon and finding new ways to wield it.
That's a great analogy. The Act provided a legal framework for challenging all sorts of civil rights violations. Think about the landmark case of Brown v. Board of Education, which desegregated schools.
That was a huge victory, and it's amazing to think that a law from 1871 played a role in it.
It's a testament to the Act's enduring power, but its journey didn't end there. The Act faced further challenges in the 1980s with a series of Supreme Court decisions that narrowed its scope once again.
What happened this time?
The court made it harder to sue institutions that received federal funds if the discrimination wasn't directly tied to the specific program receiving the funds.
So it's like they were trying to chip away at the act's effectiveness.
You could say that, but Congress stepped in to clarify and expand the reach of the Act with the Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987.
How did that act strengthen the 1871 Act?
It overturned those limiting Supreme Court decisions. The 1987 Act made it clear that if any part of an organization received federal funds, the entire organization was subject to the anti-discrimination provisions of the 1871 Act.
So a university couldn't discriminate in one department while still receiving federal grants for another department.
Exactly. This was a major victory for civil rights advocates. It closed a loophole that had allowed some institutions to engage in discrimination while still benefiting from federal dollars.
We've covered so much ground from the Act's origins in combating the KKK to its evolution in the 20th century, but it sounds like the story doesn't end there.
You're right. The Civil Rights Act of 1871 continues to be relevant today, offering a legal avenue for addressing contemporary issues like racial profiling and voting rights.
Quite a journey with the Civil Rights Act of 1871, haven't we?
We have.
From its origins, in the fight against the KKK to its revival during the Civil Rights Movement, this law has a long and complex history.
It certainly does. And what's remarkable is that even though it was enacted over 150 years ago, it's still relevant today.
Yeah.
It's become a vital tool in the ongoing fight for equal protection under the law.
That's what I find so fascinating. We've talked about, its historical context and its evolution over time, but I'm really curious about how it's being used today.
Okay.
Can you give us some concrete examples?
Absolutely. The 1871 Act, specifically 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, continues to be a powerful tool for addressing a wide range of civil rights violations. One area where we see it being used is in cases of police brutality.
That makes sense. I mean, we've all seen the headlines, and the videos, but how exactly does the Act apply to these situations?
Well, remember, the Act allows individuals to sue state officials who violate their constitutional rights.
Right.
Police officers, as agents of the state, fall under this category. So if a police officer uses excessive force, conducts an unlawful search and seizure, or engages in racial profiling, the victim can bring a lawsuit under Section 1983.
So it's not just about holding individual officers accountable. It's about addressing systemic patterns of abuse within law enforcement agencies.
That's a key point. A single lawsuit might not change an entire police department's culture,
Right.
but a series of successful lawsuits can force those agencies to reevaluate their policies and practices.
Right.
It can lead to reforms in training, use of force guidelines, and accountability measures.
And what about other areas where we see this being applied today?
Another significant area is voting rights.
Okay.
We've seen a surge in legislation across the country that makes it more difficult for people, particularly in minority communities, to vote.
Right.
The 1871 Act can be used to challenge these laws if they can be shown to disproportionately disenfranchise voters based on race.
So, for example, if a state implements strict voter ID laws that disproportionately impact Black and brown voters, or if they reduce the number of polling places in predominantly minority neighborhoods, those actions could be challenged under the 1871 Act.
Precisely, and the Act has been successful in striking down some of these discriminatory voting laws. It's a reminder that the fight for equal voting rights, which was so central to the Civil War and Reconstruction, is still very much alive today.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has been.
We started by talking about the KKK and Reconstruction, and now we're discussing contemporary issues like police brutality and voting rights.
Right.
It really highlights the enduring legacy of this act and its relevance to our lives today.
It's remarkable, isn't it? The Civil Rights Act of 1871 is a testament to the ongoing struggle for equality and justice.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the fight for civil rights is a marathon, not a sprint, and that we have to be vigilant in protecting and expanding those rights for future generations.
And that's a powerful note to end on. I hope this deep dive has not only informed you, but also empowered you, because understanding the past is essential to shaping a more just and equitable future. Thanks for joining us.